It's time for another season of The Palmetto Porch, an original podcast from Discover South Carolina. I'm Devin Whitmire. Join me as I get to the heart of what makes South Carolina such a great place to visit by speaking to the locals who make it so special. Premiering December 5th, find The Palmetto Porch wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information about our show, visit scpalmettoporch.com.
We do not have a large teenage audience, I would guess, but if there are anybody who's listening who's in that age, like, don't try to kiss away your emotions like Elsa's doing.
There was a lot of new during episode 7 of 1883. New terrain, new characters, new cameo appearances, and new obstacles for James, Shay, and his thinning group of pioneers to overcome. After a simply devastating weather event, you have to ask if anyone aside from James and Margaret didn't get to where they want to go. The future looks very, very bleak. I'm Madison Hager, and this episode of 1883 was one of my favorites to date. But I know not everyone loved the adventure and the tension. In fact, my co-host Billy Dukes is still recovering. We've talked about this before, but the real stars of the show aren't Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Sam Elliott, or even Isabel May. It's the hardened prairies of North Texas and wild rivers mark the borders of Oklahoma and states unseen. Mother Nature is both hero and villain, and during this episode, she unleashed catastrophe. And then 13 bandits try to kill everyone and steal the cattle. Yeah, it was a lot to take in. The most astute viewers recognized the men playing two new characters, Sam and Charles. Historians might have noted the significance of Charles. He's the cowboy that comes out of nowhere to save the home team during the shootout. We'll get to all of that and try to understand the most puzzling question of all. Why did Elsa start making out with a guy she just met in the middle of a tornado? Tap follow and leave a 5-star rating and review if you're appreciating this opinion and analysis. And as always, hit us with an email at staff@tasteofcountry.com. We'll try to respond to all of them and choose a few each week for listener Q&A. That's also where you'll send answers to the weekly trivia question, which is where we'll begin as we bring in Billy Dukes right now.
Hello, Addison!
Hello, Billy! We can officially start covering episode 7 because we've seen it. Last episode of this podcast, we had not quite yet seen it. But now we can officially say we're here for it and we can dissect.
Part of me wants to go back in time to when I hadn't seen it, because it really brought me down in a lot of different ways. And not just because it was kind of a sad episode. I mean, really a sort of a downer episode, because that's kind of the norm. But it just really left me, I don't know, it bothered me for the better course of like 24, 48 hours. I just was like bothered by things, and I think it affected my relationships.
Personal relationships?
It might have. I might have been a not as good of. I mean, I didn't do the weekend happy hour Zoom with the family. I was a little bit distant with my wife and kids. Like, I'm not sure.
Gosh.
Elsa Dutton and James. Yeah, they might be to blame.
Well, Billy, I will point this out that I've noticed consistently with us. The episodes that I leave just going, give me a Kleenex, give me a week off of work, I can't do this. They're the episodes that you kind of come back from going, oh, I really enjoyed that episode. Because all that to be said, this episode, I wouldn't say, no, I did not leave the show going, oh, happy-go-lucky. But this was one that I was actually invested in. And this is one that you're going, no, I'm just emotionally distraught,
Well, my issues may run a little bit deeper or a little bit bigger picture.
Okay.
But let's start how we have with trivia, like we've done the last few weeks.
Yes, who's the winner of last trivia?
Last week's trivia question was, Sam Elliott's real-life wife is Catherine Ross, best known for playing Elaine Robinson in the 1967 movie The Graduate. However, she and Faith Hill have something in common on their resumes. What is it? This was a little bit of an easier trivia question. A number of people emailed correctly, but Lisa was first to know that they were both in the Stepford Wives, different versions of it. Catherine Ross was in the original. Faith Hill was in the 2004 remake. So congratulations to Lisa. And as per the rules, I get to be her mouthpiece.
Drum roll.
She wanted me to read a couple of her theories about Elsa.
That was smart. I'm excited.
And, and a full disclosure here, she wrote to us last week, so she hadn't seen episode 7 at this point. So if any of them are out of date, it's because she hadn't seen it. Mm-hmm. But she has 2 theories. One, I don't believe Elsa will be pregnant because if I'm remembering correctly, they say they're going into Indian territory at the end of episode 6, and she got shot in the first episode by Indians. So I believe in one of the 3 episodes left, she probably will be shot, which won't be enough time to have the baby. That could still happen. That's a valid theory.
Yeah.
And the other is prediction on Spencer is he might be Yosef's child, because I remember them talking in episode 3 or 4 about wanting to have a baby. They ended up trying to during that episode. So if they both die, the Duttons take their boy in. A couple of people have gone with this theory that Yosef and his wife have a kid and the Duttons end up raising him.
Interesting. Well, and I mean, that's a great memory because, to be honest, they aren't characters that really have stuck with me in my mind. I kind of, they're on the screen. I'm like, oh, great. And then I just don't really think much of it after that. And
right.
Interesting. Well, and kind of going back to what we said last podcast episode, that the Duttons, on Yellowstone are very much so, taking people, and we took in Rip, now we're taking in Carter. And you had even said, maybe this stems so much farther back to James Dutton. And I mean, that could easily be a plausible thought.
Congrats to Lisa. Staff at tasteofcountry.com is the email address, as we have like the most difficult trivia question yet. I'll be shocked if anybody gets this, to be honest.
What is it?
Okay, it goes back to Yellowstone.
Okay.
In Yellowstone, when Jamie first meets his real father, I think it's episode 9 of season 3, Garrett calls him by a different name. Ooh. What name does Garrett call Jamie?
Oh, Billy, you picked a hard one this week.
It's really tough. Like, he just kind of sneaks it in there. But a number of people picked up on it. It's a tough one. Okay, I'm ready to talk about episode 7 now.
Alrighty. Yeah, you're emotionally ready. Maybe deep breath. Sip that coffee. Should we start with the major natural disaster that happened? Do we want to start there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this to me is what I'll remember the episode for. It was a 10 to 15 minute long sequence from the preparation through the end and the recovery of a huge tornado that comes through. I mean, they all look huge to me, but this one looked particularly big through Oklahoma, and it wreaked havoc. Mm-hmm.
Well, and for, someone, I mean, we're both, somewhat known for tornadoes. You want an area, when a tornado's coming like that, it touches down, you want somewhere that's not higher ground. Well, where they're at, it's all one level, essentially. And so they're pretty much just running just to literally lay flat on the ground, letting their horses go. Wagons are being blown up into pieces. And yeah, that definitely had me on the edge of my seat. What were your thoughts as it was happening? I know there's one specific thought at the end that I have that I'll touch on in a minute, but we won't go there because that will completely rabbit hole us here. But yeah, what were your takeaways?
Well, my first thought was like, how the heck did they shoot this? Like, how did they capture this amazing tornado sequence? Yeah. And, there must have been some green screens and some cinematography trickery, but the acting was really great. And it was really a convincing tornado scene. I thought that part was wonderful. I guess my main thought was it changed what I expect to happen for this show. Like, I certainly expected deaths along this journey, but right. I certainly expected a number of people to reach their goal beyond just the Duttons. Like, we know the Duttons get to Montana. Thomas and Shay want to get to Oregon, as do all the other immigrants. And at this point, I just don't think anybody, not only do I not think anybody's going to get to where they want to go outside of the Duttons, I don't know if anybody's living past these next 2 or 3 episodes. And that's what hit me so hard is that it just seems like all is like lost and there is no more hope.
Yeah, I definitely felt when the wagons went up and all the above. Yeah, definitely thought as well. Like the immigrants, they can barely, we've barely been able to get them here on horseback and wagons, much less now on foot. But do you really think that Thomas and Shay are going to not make the journey?
Well, I've kind of felt all along that Shay would die somewhere along the way.
Okay.
Just because his character is so... it just seems to be his fate. He's lived his life. He's certainly had his demons. Thomas, I was more optimistic about, especially now that he's began this relationship with Noemi. Mm-hmm. But I don't see how they get there. They hardly have enough wagons. They have 50 people left, including like 24 or 26 children. Their food, their supplies, everything is scattered. Who knows where the horses are? I don't see it. I don't know how they could possibly carry on after this.
Well, and speaking of when you were saying just filming it, I totally would have loved to be a fly on the wall of just watching the kind of behind the scenes of this production. And you mentioned this in our recent news video kind of covering this last episode, but touch a little bit on what Taylor Sheridan had said about 1883 as a whole when it comes to the production. I mean, because it has been so well done, and it's not something that's, easy. I mean, it's pretty ornate and intricate.
He appeared on the official Yellowstone podcast and shared with Jefferson White that he thought that 1883 might be the most expensive television series ever filmed.
I would believe
which is
it.
Mind-blowing. You think I always aligned expensive shows with shows that were super high tech. And that's not the case here at all. It's very analog, so to speak. Like those are real wagons and they had to build these real sets. I don't think of that as costing as much money as like digital effects and stuff like that. But, a scene like this, I mean, that had to have been just a tremendously expensive scene. It reminds me of the opening of season 4 of Yellowstone, a scene where they did it was the scene where they, right after the bomb and the shootings and everything, where Casey's going after everybody at the very beginning of season 4 of Yellowstone.
Yes, all the cars
supposedly that scene
crashing and
yes, yeah. Supposedly that scene cost $10 million.
Wow! My gosh, chum change apparently. Oh my gosh!
Right. So I would put this one probably up there with it. I don't know. I would think. I'm not an expert in these kinds of things, but super expensive show and a super expensive scene, no doubt.
Well, speaking of this scene. I was telling Billy this earlier. I've officially decided that Elsa is the modern day equivalent to The Bachelorette on ABC. That she just has, anytime a single male comes into the picture, it does not take us. It is within the same scene that he sees her, and we have Ennis, then we have Colton, and now we have Sam, the Native American, who, all of a sudden, I mean, literally, Elsa pops up on the scene, and I'm like, well, if we could start a drinking game of every single time a man falls in love with her, we would not be able to get through this episode. It is insane. But I will say, so right before the tornado, the Native Americans come in, and they aren't, there's a, we'll help you type of relationship. It's not hostile. You kind of see Sam looking at Elsa like, ooh, kind of, they kind of catch glance and nothing much from that. So I'm not thinking anything.
A little bit.
They're flirty, but then here comes a tornado. So what's going to happen during a tornado? Right. Not a romance scene by any means. That's not what my brain was prepared for. No, certainly and not. As they are literally running for their lives, and the scene where you can hear all the commotion, once again, kind of like the river scene, any tense scene is matched with very peaceful music. All of a sudden, everything goes silent, at least when we're thinking of the river piano scene crossing and river crossing. And once again, Elsa kind of looks at Sam, cue music, and starts making out with him. After she is screaming at the top of her lungs that there is a tornado right on top of them. Billy, I was so caught off guard, and I didn't know what to think of that and why Taylor added that randomly in. And I, up until this point, had felt like, okay, she's been really, really grieving Ennis. And not to say, yes, at some point she's gonna have to move on, and she's been doing that slowly, but man, we went from 0 to 100 of all of a sudden we're making out and here comes a tornado, but then that's it. We don't touch on it again in the entire episode, and it just irks me.
We do not have a large teenage audience, I would guess, but if there are anybody who's listening who's in that age, like, don't try to kiss away your emotions like Elsa's doing. It's just, it leads to bad places, especially as you get older and alcohol gets involved. Like, it's just, you're going to regret it. A couple of things, though.
Yeah.
So you want the positive or the slightly negative?
Let's go negative first, and then we can hit the positive.
I've really kind of been... one thing I've really enjoyed about this show is the artistic beauty of it and how it's one man's vision. And we've talked about this again and again. Episode 4, we saw that. The speech that Shay had to Elsa in episode 6, we saw that. Just these really beautiful moments. And it all seems to align up and work perfectly. Throughout this episode 7, I saw a lot of sort of beautiful artistic thoughts that to me never really aligned and coordinated and worked together. So you get like these shocking, head-tilting kind of moments, or like this just cornucopia of drama and violence that you don't really even have time to respond to.
Yeah.
I think what Elsa might have been doing, and this is the positive, is I feel like in that moment she might not have been in her mind kissing Sam, but maybe she was kissing Ennis in some sort of way. Like she was preparing herself for death, and she wanted to be with, she wants to be with Ennis again. So maybe in some way that was like what she was projecting onto him. A stretch?
Yeah. Well, the only reason why I'm saying it might be a little bit of a stretch, because if we rewind a few seconds before when they have to let the horses go and she's riding Ennis's old horse, she looks at the horse and says, I love you, which is not, she was not saying I love you to the horse itself. It was more like Ennis's spirit that she was saying I love you and kiss the horse. So that's why I kind of feel like that nod to that theory happens with the horse and not with Sam. But yeah, it was a scene that caught me off guard. And I want to know your wife's take on it, because I feel like your wife and I tend to be on the same thought process.
My wife really loved this episode. We didn't talk about the Elsa and Sam kissing scene.
Okay.
But she really loved this episode. But she loved it because it was so much of a change of pace. We saw a great tornado. We saw a really killer gunfight. There were some new characters introduced. It was just it kind of broke it all up for her. And that was made it her favorite episode, is in fact what she said.
Wow.
I didn't. I thought it was disjointed at times. I had a hard time following it. And it was just, to me, after that, and I want to get back to Sam here in a second, but to me, after that shock of reality of the tornado and this realization that like most of these people aren't going to make it where they want to go, then there's this gunfight with bandits where there's like 13 deaths and all this shooting and new characters coming in out of nowhere in the name of Charles. It felt like learning your mom is dying, but then getting in a car wreck on the way home from the hospital. I mean, yes, it's real. That's real. That might have been what it's like. But I still need to volunteer to watch this show week to week, and damn, that's a tall order. No one's forcing us to watch here. It was a struggle for me for that reason.
Well, and to your point of getting back to Sam real quick, and his past with Taylor Sheridan, and also where else we have seen him, because this is not, Naomi or Noemi. This was her first time. Or Graziella Brancusi, this was her first acting gig, and this is not the same for Sam's character. No. So dive deep into that. I know that you've got a lot of good nuggets there.
Well, Yellowstone fans may recognize Martin Sensmeyer. That's the actor's name. He was in season 2 of he was in season 2 of Yellowstone. He played I forget the character's name, but he's Monica's physical therapist as she's recovering from that assault at the school. And he tries to get a little bit flirty with her as she's separated from Casey. She ultimately shoots him down, and that leads to Casey and Monica getting back together. Martin was also in Wind River. He was most well known, though, in the movie The Magnificent Seven. He plays I don't remember his character's name in it, but he plays one of the characters there. And that's probably his biggest role. He's one of the Magnificent Seven. So he has a pretty distinguished acting role or acting career. This might be his only scene or episode of 1883, but it was certainly a good one. He played, I think he saved her life 2 times throughout this.
Well, Billy, I want to talk real quick about my personal favorite scene. It was quick, but I loved it of Faith. And it's when, first off, I want to say between my analogies today, so we have, Elsa the Bachelorette of the traveling crew, the men flocking to her. And we have Cookie, who's the chef who's traveling with him. He is what I would say is like, we're going to cotillion class. And why I say that is because, he makes this meal for the immigrants and they don't know essentially etiquette 101. And he goes off on them. He's like, excuse me, you're not just going to take that piece of steak off the plate. You're going to use silverware. Come on now. And yeah, as I was watching, I'm going, oh, we are cotillion with Cookie. And it pretty much, says the F word. And you have little John Dutton Sr. And pretty much Mama Bear comes out in Faith Hill and Margaret Dutton. And when she walks up to get her food, he asks, do you want half a steak or a whole steak? And she slaps him, not because of the half steak, whole steak situation, but pretty much says, if you say that word one more time in front of my son, it's going to end up a lot worse, which I thought was so funny because I'm going to parallel this moment where you have James Dutton come up after Margaret and pretty much he looks at Cookie going, it could have been a lot worse, so be lucky. And that moment, I don't know if you've ever seen The Blind Side when Tim was in The Blind Side, and the wife is also a little bit of a Spitfire personality in The Blind Side.
Yeah,
and there's a moment where she, comes walking down those bleachers to the football coach and she, gets in her face of like, don't mess with my son, essentially. And Tim takes that similar role. Yeah, Michael takes that, or don't mess with Michael. And Tim takes a similar role again of like, just let your mom do her thing. You know what I mean? Where that's what I saw in this moment. I was like, Tim is his character and James is taking this role of, yeah, don't, sir, you knew you poked the mama bear. Don't do it. Don't do it. What did you, I enjoyed that scene.
I did too. I really liked the character of Cookie overall.
Yeah, same.
He's funny and serious and kind of gruff. I hope he kind of continues through the end of the series. He almost kind of, in a way, replaces Ennis.
Yes,
and then he kind of has
what I was going to say. Yes.
He has like a lighthearted feel to him. Like you smile when he's around, like you did with Ennis.
Yes,
which,
absolutely.
That was necessary. So I'm glad they did. Yeah. Which means, he's going to die.
I know. If we've learned anything, I'm sure listeners, also have learned with us of like, well, great. Addison and Billy said something. So great. Next episode. See you later, Cookie. Cookie's cotillion is gone.
The other new character we met was, and this came out of nowhere, Charles.
Yes! I mean, almost like a ghost if he just appeared. The fairy godmother just, came out of nowhere. And he was apparently, allegedly, doing the same thing of, catching bandits and looking for cattle. I'm like, by yourself?
Right. This was a really odd sequence of events. And it kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier, where it kind of felt a little bit kind of all shoehorned in there. Like he's just all of a sudden shooting people next to the Comanche Indians. And then it turns out he knows Shay. And he has a strange kind of accent that I couldn't really pick up. Like it's almost like a well-to-do type of almost British accent, but he's from Texas. Because Charles isn't just some run-of-the-mill cowboy wrangler. Charles is actually based on a historical character.
Charles Goodnight, who is is at the time, was the most famous rancher. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but so he just pops out of nowhere. And kind of to your point of, you couldn't really make out the accent. My theory to that is Taylor Sheridan, when he plays, he's once again another Where's Waldo character when he plays Travis in Yellowstone, he has such a distinct voice that I feel like in order to not blur those lines of confusion there, I feel like you almost have to take on his accent may not have been as like what we expected it to, just purely because you're not there for that.
I think you're trying hard to come up with something there, but
that scene in general, was one of those that just really, the reason why I'm stretching here is I think just that scene in general, I was looking for this questioning of how on earth did you just appear out of nowhere? So trying to make all these things make sense, but go into a little bit more depth of who exactly is Charles Goodnight.
Well, I don't have too much more on him. All I have is that he's the father of the Texas Panhandle, legendary rancher. Of course, it is actor Taylor Sheridan who created the show. And one thing I did learn through listening to an interview with Taylor Sheridan is how he sounds as Travis on Yellowstone. Like, that's his normal voice. Because that's exactly how he sounded during that interview. And it's almost kind of funny, like the relationship that Travis and Jimmy have on Yellowstone is kind of the same relationship that Taylor and Jefferson White have during this interview. Like, Jefferson White asks a question, or he makes a statement, and Travis goes, "What the F kind of question was that?" And it's like, and then they move on to something. He kind of bullies him a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Like, is this Jimmy or Jefferson?
Travis. If this is his only other accent or only voice he does is sort of like this well-to-do British-ish man, he might want to not do it too much.
Right.
But it was good to see Taylor Sheridan on screen. He looked good. He played a great character, and I think he's one and done as well. I don't anticipate him sticking around for future episodes.
We had a tornado in this episode, and then, of course, we have more bandits, which I will say, thank goodness, this episode we did not leave with a major character. I don't think actually no one on, all the bandits were killed, but everyone else lived, which was nice. I was not, when at first we approached this, I was like, okay, who's going to die? But it was nice that we actually had victory without any casualties.
The bandits were almost like Star Wars stormtroopers, where they have one hit for every 100 hits. And it's not like, Thomas and Shay and James were particularly well hidden or sheltered.
No, it's flat.
At one point, Shay Brennan's just standing up, like firing his gun at people running by, horsemen and cowboys running by, and they end up taking down all 13 of them. I guess Sam and Charles take down a few on their own, and then, of course, Margaret Dutton gets her kill right at the end.
Love it.
There were some injuries, but nothing really worth talking about. But they, you're right, they all survived.
Yeah.
So no deaths on this episode of the show, which was nice.
Yay. Well, I do want to touch on Elsa outside of her makeout session with Sam that threw me off guard. Do you have some thoughts on her that we had kind of talked about before as we were planning the podcast? I am very intrigued to hear what you have to share.
Some critical information on Elsa. She has, her monologue is particularly grim, I thought, this episode. Like, she starts off saying, "The plains are littered with bones." I don't know. That's not the best Elsa impersonation. "And the filth of our touch is an apocalypse." Like, oh boy, that's
as it scans to the skeleton.
But Tim McGraw was on the Kelly Clarkson show last week, and Isabel May, the actress, was on that show as well, and she was actually on the couch. And I'm going to mention her outfit, if only to make a point. We learned two things. First of all, we learned that Isabel May did not know who Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were prior to the filming of 1883. Yes. That is fantastic.
I also watched that, yeah.
She is wearing, I guess, what you would call like a crop top.
Yes, we can go with it. I watched the clip that you're talking about. So, yeah, I'd say it's a set. It was a kind of a skirt, yes, with we'll say crop top.
All right, midriff bearing, and it had no sleeves. And you can clearly see that her commitment to leaving her armpit hair unshaven did not last very long.
Oh my gosh!
Stop the presses.
Think to look at that, Billy.
Isabella May has shaved her armpit hair. Breaking news from.
Well, yeah, because you were the one who had said, this just in from the Dutton Rules podcast. Tweet it, Billy, tweet it. No.
You only get that kind of coverage here. I mean, you're not going to get that on other podcasts.
Isabel makes
important stuff.
Not Elsa. The person herself, her armpit hair has been shaven. Well, because she had said it was on. Was it the Yellowstone podcast that she had said? I'm actually okay with keeping it for her everyday life. Well, that didn't. Maybe for a hot second, but yeah.
Tim McGraw also shaved his beard, which is good because that thing's getting a little out of control by episode 7. Like that is really
a little gnarly.
Like it's growing out, not down, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah, whenever it goes horizontal and not vertical, that's when you go, okay, no. Yeah. Time to go. And I just don't think outside of 1883, I don't think that fits Tim. I don't think like some stubble or some, a little bit of something, yes, but yeah, no, not James Dutton vibes for Tim McGraw's everyday life.
Denim is in demand at Plato's Closet in West Ashley and North Charleston. Get cash on the spot for everything denim. Bring in your trendy and classic styles of gently used name brand denim. Get paid for your denim shorts, skirts, jackets, jeans, and more. We're looking for denim that is blue, black, or a bold color, and jeans in styles like mom jeans, bootcut, baggy, flared, and ripped. We want everything denim. Sell your denim for cash at Plato's Closet today. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
On that note, Billy, are we on the armpit hair note? Are we ready for some Q&A? What a transition!
Yes.
Alrighty.
Who do we got this week?
The first one, I have 3 for you. The first one is from Jean Ann and says, "Didn't have Spencer as half Comanche on my bingo card." Billy, explain.
Well, I think she's kind of cracking a joke. Jean Ann is probably the person who emails as much as anybody. We have good conversations back and forth. But she's referring to the point that you made about Elsa and Sam making out as if that's the next big romance on 1883. He might have won The Bachelorette, perhaps.
Well, I did also think that. I was thinking of, Spencer, and I was like, I don't remember. Yeah, that's funny. I get that. The second one I have for you is from Michaela. And this one's interesting. She's a meteorologist and says, "As a meteorologist, I couldn't help but be enthralled with episode 7. Since the series started, I was wondering how they were going to address severe weather, which is quite common for this area. I also took a look at the climatological record from 1883, and there was a notable drought that even Shay makes reference to when deciding which direction to go with Thomas and James. 1883 is also a significant year. It's the year that Krakatoa erupted and caused global temperatures to decrease. Maybe this might indicate that we may see an early onset of winter." Oh no. Oh, I can't do winter.
I love our listeners for this reason. I mean, that's only part of the email that she sent, actually, but she sent me with links to show how, like, the climatological trends
so appreciative.
In 1883. People really love the historical accuracies of this show, and I've gotten emails with regards to the cattle routes that I think we've shared some of on the podcast. This is the first one we've had about the weather and the drought, and I'd be willing to bet that Taylor is in tune to all of this. Like, a drought could be coming. She mentions Krakatoa. That was a volcano in Indonesia. It happened on May 20th, 1883. And kind of lasted, I guess, in some capacity into October. So I don't know necessarily if the global temperature decrease she talked about happened that quickly. It might have taken a little bit longer, but it could affect the winter. She's absolutely right. I mean, she's the meteorologist, not me. So I'm going to go with her opinion, but really insightful email. Yeah. I'm glad we got to share that, and just big thank you for Michaela and everybody who's emailed in with like these super thoughtful opinions and ideas and thoughts and angles that we wouldn't even have the education to begin how to research. It really kind of picked me up, if I'm being honest, after that episode last week. I really enjoyed the emails, so I'm really appreciative of it.
The email said, "This is your bread and butter today on this episode." It's this portion right here. The last one I have for you is Devani says, "The line at the end where Elsa tells her mom that, quote, they are in heaven, but also in hell, and God is the land, was so great. Beth said it to Rip when they were drinking whiskey on the roof in season 2, episode 7, before she got beat up by the Beck brothers. Kind of a fun Easter egg. Wow, very, very Taylor Swift of them.
This is another great observation. I mean,
yeah.
Geez, season 2 of Yellowstone, I missed it, but I looked it up. Absolutely, she's right. What Beth says is, I think heaven's right here, so is hell. One person can be walking the clouds right next to someone enduring eternal damnation, and God is the land. A very similar line. Taylor sort of tipping his hat to his own writing from several years ago. And, you know, I think you can make some parallels between Beth Dutton and the woman that Elsa Dutton is turning into. They're cut from the same cloth, literally, and, you know, of course, figuratively in this case.
Right. Wow, great observation and memory. Don't forget that if you want to add any thoughts, theories, or add your trivia question that Billy had mentioned in the beginning of this episode, it's staff@tasteofcountry.com. And as you heard, that's Billy's favorite part of his week, is looking at all of the emails. So keep him happy if these episodes keep going south. Billy's not going to be doing well, but the emails and comments and all the above lift his spirits. Well, they are. I've really enjoyed them.
I enjoy the reviews and ratings as well, and that's not just a way to ask for a review and rating, although that is something I appreciate. Like, we're over 100 ratings now and some really honest reviews. I think we've read a couple here. People have sort of called us out.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I kind of want to continue to be honest with like our opinions and responses to this show. I don't love it all. I've really enjoyed the show, but I think you and I have both had moments where like, oh, what is going on here? We can't embrace all of it.
Right. Well, and we love when you guys call us out when we miss a, you know, either map or anything like that. It's always great insight. So we have thick skin, so we appreciate all the input. Thanks to Jean-Ann, Michaela, and Devani for their emails this week. Send yours to staff@tasteofcountry.com. Clearly the conversation means a lot to Billy Dukes. I'm Addison Hager, and this has been another episode of Dutton Rules, a Yellowstone 1883 podcast. We'll be back early next week with a recap of episode 8. Look through the archives for our recent bonus episode titled Everything You Need to Know About Yellowstone Season 5. Dutton Rules is written by myself and Billy Dukes and produced by Billy Dukes. Special thanks to Taste of Country's Sterling Whitaker for additional research. Tap follow and leave a rating and review if you've not yet done so, and look for our regular recap videos on YouTube. Just search Taste of Country YouTube. As always, Dutton Rules, a Yellowstone 1883 podcast, is another great Town Square Media podcast.